So let's move on into news, Dylan.
All right.
News. Okay. We're going to rush through the news stories a little bit. There's not a whole lot of news. There was a little bit of news this week. Some things we just want to touch on. First, this was amazing for me. I'm a huge Zelda fan. Ocarina of Time. If it comes out on Friday, pick it up in Europe if you've never played it before. Which probably means we'll probably get it on Monday in the United States.
Yep.
I would guess. I guess next week we'll probably be talking about this game. Ocarina of Time, easily my favorite game of all time. Music in the game is one thing that makes the game amazing. And whenever you play a game, it's all about experience. And music definitely adds to experience. Koji Kondo, one of the best composers to ever work on a video game, did a great job with the Ocarina of Time soundtrack. Well, there's these guys here they're called Zelda Reorchestrated, and that's the website. It's zreomusic.com. I'll put a link up. They did a project, which was big on the internet this last week. It was on Dig. It was about how they reorchestrated every song in the Ocarina of Time. It's all done with synthesizers, so it's not with a real orchestra, but it sounds really great. A lot of the songs either sound, I'll give them credit, every song sounds at least as good as it did in Ocarina of Time, if not better. And they did this thing called soundscapes, where I don't know how to explain it, they did one on like Hyrule Field and Zelda. I don't know if they did Hyrule Field. I think they did the Hyrule Market. I'm guaranteeing that they did Hyrule Market. And they put in background noise, like people talking and stuff, and it really sounded amazing. It sounded like you were there. My favorite by them, if you check out the site again, I'll put the link up. It's www.zreomusic.com. I'm trying to think of it because it's weird letters. But my favorite was they did the Twilight Princess title theme, the vocal kind of thing sounding. Yeah. It sounds amazing. It's amazing. So, actually, I talked to the head guy of their site, I think, their head project designer. Just talked to him on the internet a little while ago. I'm going to do an interview with him.
Wow.
And we're going to put it on my blog or something. I don't know if I was hoping to do an audio interview, but I don't know if it's going to happen.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to be a text interview, so I'm going to put it on my blog. I'll give you guys an update on that next week if you can get it on the forums or something like that, because I think it's going to be a great interview. It's a great project. I'm really excited about it. I think you should check it out. Next thing is, EB Games kind of made a little poke at the PSP last week with an ad they launched. I got this one from GameBrink. I think GameBrink was the website that had this, but it was pretty much all over the internet.
It was on Dig. Pretty popular.
I didn't see it on Dig. Was it on
really?
Dig? No,
yeah,
I got it from some other site. It's been all over the internet. Pretty much every news site I checked kind of brought this ad up. Basically, EB Games brought this thing where they said, "Oh, you want the DS? It's like, do you want the future of gaming? Future of handheld gaming is in your hand right now. If you do this trade-in." Yeah. And it had the DS was under the future thing. It had said trade in the past for the future. Yeah. And under the past was the PSP.
A fat DS.
There was a fat DS and there was a Game Boy Advance SP. And I think people were upset because the PSP had like the most trade-in value for the DS. But I mean that makes sense because the PSP is the most expensive out of those products, so it makes sense that you get the most trade-in value for it.
Well, I think it's because that the PSP and the DS are kind of competitive markets.
Yeah, and to say that the future is the DS compared to the PSP is a big statement. But you know what? A lot of people are angry about this, and I understand where you're saying that this is kind of a way to beat up the PSP. Yeah. But you have to realize that from a marketing standpoint, and in all honesty, the DS is shattered sales compared to the PSP. It's a marketing move, not their choice. It's a marketing thing. That's what they do. Sorry. It's just, if the PSP sold more units than the DS, they'd do the same thing for the DS.
Yeah, they would.
So that's about all that story was. You can find the ad online if you search EB PSP DS ad or something on Google.
Could we get it on the show?
I'll see what I can do.
All right.
I'll see what I can do. Not promising anything. And finally, let's jump into our last story. Again, there's not a whole lot of news. This one, take this as a rumor report. Actually, this would be rumor report. Don't take this as truth exactly right now. Don't get your hopes up. But thing we saw, this was on Wired Blog Network, was that Japan-only games are possible on the U.S. Virtual Console. This is something that means a lot to me, personally, because Nintendo has stated since the day Virtual Console was announced that, no, you're not going to get games outside your region. It's not going to happen. And I think they saw an outcry from gamers. Personally, in the United States, there's some games in Japan that we don't see here. Games that would make sense to just translate them. Most of these games that come out in Japan have the English translations built into the games. Why don't you just throw the game out through your Virtual Console? You're going to make money. Well, Nintendo had held the stance that we're not going to do that, and now they had George Harrison, Vice President of Nintendo of America, say, well, we're not necessarily sure that's not going to happen. It could happen. No guarantees. They haven't put anything in stone yet, but they're saying that it is at least technically possible for a Japan-only game to come out in the United States Virtual Console. So there's no clarification as to when this is happening, if it's actually really going to happen. They said they're more worried about getting all their great United States content out before they worry about that in the first place. So they've got a huge backlog of games to worry about. But in the future, it's definitely something that could happen. So that's great news. Again, don't get your hopes up, but for somebody like me, there's a couple games. I'd really love to see one game that I've wanted to import and never did because the price was really high, was Sin and Punishment. It was made by Treasure. It was a shooting game for the Nintendo 64. It came out really late in the 64's life cycle. Probably would have been launched here, but it was just too late. Kind of the GameCube was coming out. It was an amazing looking game. Really, I think the whole game was in English. If I remember right, there was an English translation. I mean, really just to put the game on the console. And then there's some other little things. One personally I think would be cool is in Majora's Mask. A lot of people don't know that there's differences between the Japanese version and the United States version of Majora's Mask. Relatively good-sized differences. In the U.S., you only saw 2 save files in Majora's Mask. If you remember the 64 version, which is odd for a Zelda game. Every Zelda game has 3 save files. Well, that's because in the Japanese version of the game, you couldn't save at those owl statues. You could only save like when the 3 days was over. It made the game a hell of a lot harder. So I think that'd be cool to kind of give both Majora's Masks so you could play, oh, here's the Japanese version, which is considered by many, I actually have the Japanese version, to be a lot harder than the American version, just because of the saving system, and there are a few other things, songs and stuff. I think it was basically the save version, but it'd be interesting to say, oh, here's the Japanese version. If you want to see the difficulty difference, play it, buy it. So I'd like to see something like that happen. But again, this isn't anything set in stone, it's just speculation, but Nintendo of America Vice President did come out and say, look, it is technically possible. It's something we're definitely looking into because of the interest from gamers. So Nintendo's listening.
So, but this wouldn't really work on the UK Wii's at all.
That's the difference because of the PAL format, and I don't know enough about it to technically. I don't know enough about Nintendo's internal system with the Virtual Console to say yes or no.
Okay.
I think theoretically, I don't know. I don't think because they're just emulating the software anyway. So to me, technically, I don't think there'd be a problem. I think that you'd put the United States emulator through their Virtual Console, and you would be emulating U.S. software, which doesn't seem to me like technically should be that big of a problem. If it is, email me and let me know because I'm not sure exactly, but it doesn't seem like it would be a problem. However, I'm not sure, and I don't know how the Virtual Console's set up. I mean, that's only the things Nintendo developers would know anyway. So, definitely could happen if it's U.S. Japan. I mean, I know U.S. and Japan would be technically possible. I don't know about U.S. Europe or Japan Europe. Okay. So that's enough of the news stories for this week. Not a whole lot of news again. Just you're getting towards the beginning of the year. It's going to be pretty dead till May with big stories. So, nothing too much. But favorite game of all time.